with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is belonging as we're moving into the holidays and connecting with people and families. And I think belonging is a great topic, and especially because so many of us have felt that we're outsiders. So we get to talk about what belonging is and how maybe we can cultivate it within ourselves. So before we get started, let's just take a minute to settle in and get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen just flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing your cells, bringing life and vitality and health. And as you exhale any obstruction, any tension. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And this time, imagine brilliant, sparkling light lighting you up, moving into all the molecules and electrons that make you up and connect you with the world beyond, and just electrifying and energizing every part of you. And as you exhale any stress, any remaining tension. And now let's just gently press our palms together. Softly, softly, softly rub your fingers against your palms and allow that sensation to bring you present to this moment right here, right now. And so welcome, welcome, welcome. Yes, let's talk about belonging. I don't know about you, but a lot of my life was really feeling very much an outsider. And like I really didn't have much of an understanding about how to be a human being here on this planet. There's so much of the way that things are here seems so completely foreign to me, and still do actually. So I used to feel very, very, very separate, and that I think it is interesting because in recent years, so many of us who are, shall we say, different from mainstream type people. I'm not sure, I'm not sure who those people are, but so many of us who are different are finding our tribe. And I remember a while back with one of my family members who I am very close with. Um, at one point, they were saying how our relationship meant so much, and that it only takes one person in the world to give you a sense of connection and belonging. One other person in the world that you are feeling related to. And I don't mean by blood, but I mean that you feel a kinship with, that you feel a heartfelt connection with. And I'm wondering if you're experiencing or have experienced something similar, in terms of uh, this sense of difference, this sense of separation, the sense of being alien or other, and how you've navigated it. Because for me in my life, I had a lot of pain and anguish around that experience of being different, not fitting in, not belonging, not feeling like I fit in my family or with other people in my life. And the way that I managed that in my life is that I would typically have one close friend. And sometimes, there would be a falling out with that one friend, and then my world fell apart. And I, over time, as I have become more whole, what I recognize is that I belong in my life. And each of us is crafting this remarkable piece of performance art, you could say, in a way, that is our own life, our own lives, our own life. And when we feel more complete, when we find a place of centeredness and presence within ourselves, the need for belonging really shifts and dissipates. And I believe it really is true that we only need one other person, and if we need that, that it only takes one other person to um, to feel a sense of belonging. But ultimately, I think that it's an inside job, and so navigating this sense of separateness, especially in holiday times when we with COVID, who knows what you're up to this year as far as connection with family. But I remember family gatherings were used to be pretty challenging for me because it emphasized my experience of not belonging. And what I noticed over time is that with a greater sense of personal wholeness, with a greater sense of self, I have a greater capacity to be present to others and create that sense of connection, even through difference. Um, I don't need anything from these other people, and therefore I can be fully present with them. I can enjoy them. I can appreciate them. I can engage with them. I can connect with them. And I think that that's a really important thing for us to recognize, that when we're engaging with others, as we presence ourselves more to our own center, as we're able to remain in our own center, then we have a greater capacity both to give and receive, and to really have a connection. I've been uh, engaged with one of my clients talking about some disruption in family, and how we deal with hurt and upset, and within the context of relationships that are relationships that we've had all our lives, family relationships. How do we deal with these often fraught relationships with family members? And how do we find a place of forgiveness? Good morning, Dido. Welcome, welcome. How do we find a place of forgiveness without feeling like we're sacrificing our integrity? So what was coming up in this situation for this person was uh, there had been an altercation that felt like a deep violation of values and appreciation, recognition. And the person that felt hurt and violated by this interaction felt like they didn't want to reward the other person with forgiveness, because they felt that it would be condoning the other person's behavior. And I think that we get to look at what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is not for the other person. Forgiveness is something that we experience for ourselves, because holding anger, holding hurt around someone else is really hurting us. And so this sense of how does forgiveness tie in with this idea of belonging and feeling other? What happened in this particular circumstance that I'm talking about is that there was a breach. There was a breach of trust and connection, and it felt like a very deep wound. And what that breach created was a sense of separation and a sense of not belonging and a sense of wanting to retreat and just disappear from the whole circumstance. And so in this particular instance, finding the wholeness within oneself, finding that place of forgiveness offers an opportunity to bring back or heal into a sense of wholeness again and belonging. So forgiveness is an act where we choose to release the things that keep us separate, to in other words, to not cut off parts of ourselves when we're angry and we're hurt and frustrated. All of those emotions keep us separate from ourselves, and forgiveness is one path to be able to create reintegration of ourselves with ourselves. And from that wholeness, then there's this greater sense of belonging because we're whole, we're present. And a sense of separateness is, in a way, feeling like there are holes within us. If we're feeling um, if we're feeling the outsider, I mean, that can be an observation. It can be an observation that we are an outsider. The thing that is at the crux of this is that one can still feel one's sense of belonging in the world, being present in the world, having a place in the world. It may not be in that particular club, for instance, like maybe I don't belong in that group, but and we all can have a deeper sense of belonging in the world. In other words, a deep sense of worthiness, presence. And I think it's important in going into holiday seasons where many people have families that are not not the most loving and nurturing environments, to really cultivate your own strength and independence and wholeness and belonging in yourself, so that you can allow people to be how they are without taking it personally. That somebody acting like an idiot, it's not about you. Even when somebody says nasty things or things that are disruptive, it's really about them. And we don't have to take these things personally. In families, it's really challenging not to, but we don't have to take them personally, because when we really look at it, another person's behavior is their behavior. It's not about you. And it only becomes about us when we have a need for these people to behave in a different way. When we are trying to, when we are somehow attaching our own well-being to to somebody else's behavior or idea of who we are. Good morning, Tammy. Welcome, welcome. I'm really glad to see you here. We're talking about belonging and feeling like an outsider, and how really belonging, a sense of belonging, is something that doesn't have to be dependent on externals. That I may not belong in this group, for instance, but I can also still have a deeper sense of belonging in the world. And this is just talking about being being okay with being who you are, and not taking other people's behavior personally is a really, really big deal. So there was a situation where um, no, I'm not going to go there because it doesn't really have to do with the topic. But I know that through a lot of my life, I suffered feeling like an outsider and feeling like I didn't belong. And now I'm able to look at places that I don't belong, or and it's okay. It's totally okay. There are places that I do belong. And the most important part is that we get to cultivate our own sense of presence in the world, like the belonging in the world. And so this conversation is coming from a conversation with a friend who was just in despair, saying, oh my gosh, I just don't belong here. Like, if I had known that this is what the world would be, I don't think I would have come. And I can say that I've experienced a lot of that too. Like, I just really don't understand so much about what's going on in the world, so much about what human beings do to each other and to the planet. And it has been a source of deep despair for me in a lot of my life. And um, when I focus on the difference and the darkness, actually, then I find myself overwhelmed and incapacitated by it, potentially. And I also recognize that when I focus on the magic and the wonder and the amazing things that people do also, and nature, then it's a whole different experience. And what I was saying to this friend, and I think this applies to our sense of belonging, uh, and our sense of wholeness, is that we our lives are the stories that we make of them. And so if we're telling ourselves stories about not belonging, if we're telling ourselves stories of separation, if we're telling ourselves stories of difference, then we can create a very lonely experience for ourselves in the world. And when we allow ourselves to create stories of connection, even with nature, when we allow ourselves to connect with the magic and connect with other other hearts and souls, it makes a huge difference. And maybe it does take one other person to understand you, to know who you are, um, on your path to knowing who you are yourself. And once we know who we are ourselves, this whole conversation about belonging shifts entirely, because the need. It's ironic that when the need dissipates, the need for belonging, as we become more whole, then we end up belonging more readily, because we don't need something. In other words, we have we have the ability to connect and appreciate and communicate from a different place of being. So um, belonging kind of falls out of the conversation, I think. I'm wondering if you have any feedback on that, if you have any experience around that. And certainly there are some environments that we prefer over others, and um, it's interesting what people will do in order to belong, and the pretending that maybe we have fallen prey to from time to time in trying to belong, where we end up acting in ways that aren't in alignment with who we are and doing things that aren't congruent with who we are so that we can belong. And I think one of these aspects of belonging, when we're so desperate to belong and we do these things that violate our own sense of self, uh, then because we separate ourselves so much from ourselves, really bad things can happen. And that's where we get sort of a mob mentality is the group becomes a force of its own, and we give away ourselves to that. And I think that's a really important thing to be alert not to do, to continue to maintain our own integrity and our own presence of self without getting swept up into the momentum of belonging and identifying with a group. And so maybe there's an individualism here that I'm advocating, that's born from strength and presence and cultivating our own wholeness. I think that's really what the ultimate belonging is cultivating our own wholeness and not looking to outside validation. So lots of thoughts, and ultimately it all comes back to cultivating our own wholeness, and that allows us to be present to our own sovereignty and to express ourselves more authentically in the world. And it all comes back, all these conversations come back to being in alignment with your heart, and moving from the confusion that we can generate in our minds and going back into the feeling, or the intelligence of our balanced heart. So it's interesting to me, like there's belonging in all different degrees. It's wonderful to find people that you can resonate with, and it's also important to remember not to identify with them. Paulina says, this is beautiful and resonates deeply. Exactly what I need to hear at this exact moment. Paulina, I'm so glad to hear that. Sometimes I feel like I'm just rambling. So I am really glad that it's resonating for you, that ultimately we get to belong to ourselves, and we can resonate and connect with others, and we get to belong to our own heart and uh, our own special soul song. And ultimately that's where the place of true connection comes from anyway. So going into Thanksgiving, that's what we get to give thanks for, is our growing wholeness, and give thanks for our ability to connect with others. And Isabel says with me too. I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you. It really means a lot that that this resonates, because I spent so much of my life really feeling an outsider, and feeling very much alone. And I know that I wasn't the only one. So if this helps, that's awesome. And Tammy, hello. Thank you so much for being here. I just want to say thank you to all of you, and keep the faith. We're all on this path together. We're all growing and evolving, and experiencing all these life challenges together. We can share our light along the way, right? So with that, I just want to say lots and lots of love. Thank you so much for joining me. And I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live every weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. And please check out the other programming on Enlightened World Network's Facebook page. Uh, Lots of connection to be made there as well. So lots of love to you. And until next time.